All of our productions at GCTV are sponsored in part by Bay State Health, providing the care you and your family need when you need it close to home. Visit them online at baystatehealth.org. Greenfield Savings Bank. Visit them at 400 Main Street in Greenfield. Call them at 774-3191 or go online to greenfieldsavings.com. Greenfield Community College, providing access and excellence in higher education in the Pioneer Valley. Visit them at gcc.mass.edu. The Hammond Family. The Hammond family are longtime supporters of Greenfield Community Television. New Fortune Chinese Restaurant on the Mohawk Trail in Greenfield. Visit them online at newfortunema.com. Call them at 772-0838 and check them out on Facebook. Real Cleaning Services, cleaning Hampshire and Franklin County since 1972. We don't cut corners, we clean them. Check them out online at realclean.com. Call them at 413-422-1143. People's United Bank, located at 45 Federal Street in Greenfield. You can call them at 774-3713 or visit them online at peoples.com. The Solar Store of Greenfield, replacing fossil fuels and nuclear power one home at a time. Visit them at 23 Fisk Ave. Call them at 413-772-3122 or visit them online at solarstoreofgreenfield.com. Thank you to our sponsors for supporting all of GCTV's productions.
To the February 20th, 190th regular meeting of the Greenfield Town Council at the John Zahn Center. This meeting is being recorded, videotaped, and broadcast. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify me at this time. Okay, seeing none, our Assistant Town Clerk will call the roll.
Councilor Sund?
Here.
Not yet.
Councilor Alice? Councilor Pfeiffer? Councilor Dolan?
Here.
Councilor Gilmore?
Here.
Councilor Wheeler?
Here.
Councilor Mayo?
Here.
Councilor Leonovich?
Here.
Councilor Mass?
Here.
President Renault?
Here.
Vice President Ricketts? Councilor Stemple?
Present. And we have a quorum. Councilor Gilmore.
Move to suspend the rules of procedure.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? One opposition. Abstain? Okay, the rules of procedure have been waived. Councilor Gilmore, we're doing this just so that everybody watching knows what's going on and everybody in the room. We're doing this so that we can get our councilor, precinct 2 councilor seated for the beginning of the meeting and sworn in. So that's why we have to change the rules by which we go by. So that is from the A&O, and so Councilor Gilmore.
Move that it be ordered that the Greenfield City Council approves the appointment of Mark Burson to fill in the vacant Precinct 2 council seat until December 31st, 2019, pursuant to Charter Section 2-11.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Report from committee?
We talked for a good amount of time. We interviewed all of the candidates except one person wasn't available to join us that night. And we felt like we were all going to be happy with Mark Burson. Mm-hmm. And is it Burson or Beerson?
Beerson.
Beerson. I'll get it right.
I'm going to ask. I got that right? Yeah. Oh, good, yes. Councilor Mass.
Point of order, Madam President, is this the appointment that you have made? That is the only question that matters.
This is the appointment that I have made.
Thank you.
So, any other comments? Mark is I'll just say that I'm happy with the committee's recommendation. Mark is extremely capable. It was also so great to see so many qualified people want to have this seat in Precinct 2. I can recall instances in the past where we've had vacancies and we didn't have many people put their names in, and here it was really, it felt quite competitive. So all the candidates were qualified, but soon-to-be Councilor Beerson is uniquely qualified as he was part of the Charter Commission that actually wrote our town's charter. So we're thrilled to have him, and so all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. So, Councilor Beerson, could you please come up and be sworn in?
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name,
Mark Burson,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear,
that I will faithfully and impartially,
faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
perform the duties of the office to which
perform the duties to the office to which
I have been appointed
I have been appointed
in accordance with the ordinances and the charter of the City of Greenfield,
in accordance with the ordinance of this charter of the City of Greenfield,
the Constitution and general laws of the Commonwealth,
the Constitution and general laws of the Commonwealth,
and the Constitution of the United
and the
States.
Constitution of the United States.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Okay, are the Greenfields girls sports champions here?
Coach K, the girls are on winter vacation, so I don't know if they're here. I don't think they're attending tonight, so no.
Okay, we'll have it next time. That'll be exciting. It seems like they're always champions. We need an approval for city council meeting minutes from July 10th, July 18th, July 26th, 2018, August 2nd, August 15th, August 21st, 2018, September 19th, 2018, October 17th, October 30th, 2018, November 20th, 2018, December 4th, 10th, 19th, 2018, January 2nd, 16th, and 17th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Now is the time for public comment, and I'm wondering, Mark, could you please send me the list? Thank you. Karen Larrabee.
There, I pushed the button. Hi, Mom, wherever you are at home. Hi, counselors.
Hello.
I'm Karen Larrabee, 24 Oak Hill Acres, and I'm president of the Friends of the Greenfield Public Library. Last week, I zipped you all an email, and now I'd like to publicly thank you for working so hard to find a positive solution for a library yes vote. I appreciate you all coming together for the betterment of our wonderful city. Here's what's new with the Friends of the Greenfield Public Library. We conducted another successful book sale at the beginning of February, and we'll be having another one in the library basement on March 23rd. We held in the library basement the 1-year 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten celebration on February 9th. It was very well attended. We had 2 story times courtesy of Kay Lyons and Sally Ahern. We sang songs and had yummy cupcakes. I brought my nephew Dimitri, and he especially enjoyed the applesauce, apple juice in the interactive story time. The next second Saturday event is March 9th, so please stop by with your kids, your grandkids, your neighbors' kids, your nieces, your nephews, to join in the fun. We have over 125 children participating in this reading program. We are gearing up for our annual poetry contest. The deadline is March 4th to submit your poems. The contest winners will be announced at the April 25th event at Stoneleigh Burnham School. Again, I want to thank you for your time and your commitment to the new library project. Little did I know over 5 years ago what a wild ride this would be. It's been a huge learning experience for me, and I'm honored to be affiliated with a core group of library lovers that have volunteered thousands of hours to make a new library in Greenfield a reality. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. Kathy Cole?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I wish I'd been as inspired as Karen in expressing appreciation. I was trying to be much shorter and to the point, so forgive me. My name is Kathy Cole. I live at 64 East Cleveland Street in Precinct 4, and I'm here tonight as the interim president of the Greenfield Public Library Foundation. I want to give you a brief update on our recent activities since my report in January. The People's Campaign to show their strong library love and enthusiastic support of the new building project has continued over the last few weeks, and it will keep moving until March 20th or April 20th or whenever the decision is made. The People's Pint has just launched its Love Your Library with Training Wheels Session IPA, a 4-pack combo of 16-ounce bottles of Training Wheel plus a glass for $16, with $10 of each sale going to the new building, and they're available only at the People's Pint. Pierce Brothers are showing their library love with special brews of coffee, tea, and cocoa for sale on their website and the foundations and at any of our events. And proceeds of those sales all go to the new building. They're adding up. And Covers for a Cause is coming up on February 28th at Hawks and Reed with local performers covering the Tom Waits songs, which continues, Hawks and Reed continues to give the library amazing support. So it should be loads of fun. All these activities have kept the people of Greenfield very aware of the decision that still needs to come and the uncertainty around the vote. So they have done their best to show you, their counselors, of their strong support for building the new library. Pledges continue to come in. One was handed to me tonight as I was on my way up here, and I'm proud to report that citizens from Greenfield and beyond have now pledged over $700,000. This is a beautiful, yes. Thank you. This amazing outpouring of generosity comes from individuals and families who have pledged these gifts so that everyone in the city can enjoy the benefit of this fabulous new, fully accessible facility. The foundation has hired a consultant named Joe April to help us plan the campaign that will raise the rest of the $2 million that we are responsible for delivering for the project. We've made a great start. We had all the Friends group, the trustees, the foundation all together to get that planning process going, and we are ready to move ahead. Thank you all very much.
Susan Wogaftik?
My name is Susan Wargaftik. I live at 45 Forest Avenue in Greenfield. I'm a member of the Just Roots Board, and and I'm speaking in support of the expansion of our lease on the property given to the town by Justin Root. You have all the specifics in front of you. I won't repeat them. I would, however, like to remind the council of the developments over the last 9 years that have made it possible for us to come to you for this extension. Just Roots began in 2010 through a public forum that recognized the need for increasing access to healthy, local food by connecting people, land, resources, and know-how. Over the years, we've become an institution in this community that donates 30,000 pounds of food annually to food pantries, the Stone Soup Cafe, and others. In conjunction with other local organizations, has won several federal contracts that have contributed to the storage and distribution of local food to low-income residents of our community. Has developed a CSA that serves approximately 250 households, approximately half of which are low-income families. Launched a study that investigates how access to a CSA impacts health statistics, especially for such diseases as diabetes. And we'll be mainstreaming healthy food access into the housing developments in Greenfield through our local market. We have been recognized for our innovative approaches to food access by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Blue Cross Blue Shield Foundation, and the Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare Foundation, as well as many other funders. And we have partnered with the Franklin County Community Development Corporation, the Community Health Center of Franklin County, the Franklin Regional Councils of Governments, and many others to ensure that healthy, local food is available to all the residents of our community. We hope that you will support the continuation of our work through supporting the extension of our lease to the Justin Root land through 2048. And this would be a recognition of the work we've done so far and also the opportunities that I think are before us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Garrett Conley.
Hi.
Hello.
Garrett Connolly, 84 Congress Street, Greenfield. That's my name. So, I'm here to talk about the library just a little bit. This kind of thing has been in my history. I'm a former controller, budget director kind of person, and I got usually called in when the problems weren't being completely covered. So I'm not anti-library, but I mean, like you, I was raised in a kind of a chaotic family, barefoot on the edge of town. Library did a lot for me, and I support the idea of a new library, or an expanded library, actually. I've paced off the land there. I'm pretty good at that. And the reason I'm here is because I think you're overlooking a lot in a panic to get $10 million or $9 million or whatever it is. I think you're panicked. And you're overlooking a few things, and I'm only going to bring those up. I'm not here to tell you what to do. But the fire department is involved here. That's a nice building. It could be a very good recreation center for the young people of Greenfield. There could be a spring dance floor in there or something. Very nice. There's plenty of room behind the library to add on. And I think wheelchair working should be incorporated to everything. But where you're overlooking what's so important here is that right now, at this very moment, you can drive down to the end of Main Street, to the circle under the freeway, and you can see a big lot right next to the circle. It says, "We'll build to suit." Now, I don't know if you want to build a suit or buy it or what, but now there's a good place to put a fire department. you got to talk about the whole picture, not just the library. And that's what the $10 million is panicking people about. Concentrating on $10 million. Fine. Okay, maybe you have to wait another 10 years before you get another 10 million. That's $1 million a year. You already got 700,000 saved up. That would probably expand the library in itself already. You may already have the cash. But if you put a fire department, a brand new one, right down there on the highway, I bet you could get $10 million from the state. They'd give it to you. So then, okay, there's my time. Just to finish it off, at the end of Conway, on-ramps and off-ramps. They're, instead of the fire department and the police department fighting their way down through town, they're right there at the traffic circle. They can go a lot of directions and they can get a lot done. So that's all I got to say. I like the idea of a new library, but I think you're overlooking right now a big deal that's happening. It's bigger than the library, and that's to put a fire station at the traffic circle. And I think the state will pay you to do it.
Thank you, Garrett.
Thank you.
Janice Adam.
Press the button. Is that right? Oh, it's on.
Yeah.
See, I come here so often. My name is Janice Adam. I'm at 252 Davis Street, Precinct 3. And I'm here tonight to add my voice in support of the library and funding so that we can have access to that grant that was just referenced. As a community, the library is, I think, a key linchpin in improving our downtown, creating increased foot traffic by being that new anchor that we desperately need. This project also involves and solves the accessibility issue of our library. I feel like if we are forced to fix the current library to meet the ADA compliance, the cost will be very close to what the net cost of a new library would be. And we will have a much less functioning library. The math to me seems to guide us to approve the funding and allow us to get that much better facility for not a great deal more money. This would seem to be a very fiscally sound place to go. My second point tonight, and I appreciate you giving me the time to speak, is that there are times that we do need to compromise and sacrifice, and I feel like we are at one of those times. And that would be for the greater good. So we all don't get what we always want, and we don't get exactly what we want. But sometimes when I look at the library, I feel like this is one of those times where the compromise is well worth what we will gain. So I therefore respectfully request that you vote not only for the library funding, but also for the zoning change, which allows us to get the needed votes to get the approval for the library funding and secure the bright future I believe that Greenfield will have, starting with the new library. Thanks.
Thank you. David Moscaratello.
Good evening.
Good
David
evening.
Moscaratolo, 43 Country Club Road. Seems very close to you tonight. When I first moved to Greenfield a whole bunch of years ago, I took my young daughter to a town meeting about the big box store. I think she might have been 6 or so, I can't remember. But I said to her, because she was interested in learning about meetings, and I said to her, by the time you graduate college, by the time you get into college, we still won't have a big box store. Well, I was wrong, because she's graduated college, and she's working full-time, and we still don't have a big box store. My point is that I'm not against the library. People think I am because I started a page, Stop Spending Greenfield, but I'm actually for the library because it makes sense economically to build something new than to dump a whole ton of money into a junky building. But I bring that up because I'm about smart spending. But building a new library, I think, is a smart thing to do. What I am very disappointed about is people saying that the counselors or the economic people are holding the library folks hostage. This is totally untrue. You can tell by some of the library folks that just spoke that they were appreciated working with the council to come with positive ideas so this can pass. I think we've been, as a town, held hostage for many years because of the big box busters, sprawl buster, one or two people, and that's disappointing because imagine the amount of tax money that we could have taken in by having a big box store, and imagine the amount of tax money and the jobs that could have been created to support the town. And I bet you the downtown would look a lot different. Not that it's bad, it's a very nice downtown, but I think economically we could have been in a much better position, and we've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars because of one single person. It's very disappointing. The entire town voted yes for a big box store and for economic growth. If we want new buildings, if we want new infrastructure, that's great. I want that too, but we have to, it's got to be paid for somehow, and one of the ways it gets paid for is by businesses. So we really need to look at growing the businesses in Greenfield. I mean, the residents can only pay so much. You know, it's comes to a point where, you know, we can't afford all these things, but we can if we do it smart and we have economic growth. The last thing I'd like to say is, it really is upsetting that town councilors get attacked verbally about the way they think or the way they feel or the ideas they have. And that's really disappointing. So these people that are doing that, they just need to stop, because you guys work really hard and you come up with great creative ideas to work together with the public. And this bashing of the town councilors just needs to end. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. That's all I have on the sign-up sheet. Would anybody else like to speak?
Maria Burge, 29 Garfield Street, Greenfield. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank President Reynaud for initiating the awareness around the need to help keep the least of our brothers and sisters warm and safe during this last few frigid weather. Because of this, many agencies have stepped up and are actually working diligently towards a solution. I know we're not going to make this go away. However, I am very pleased that so many people have stepped up and said, you know, this is an important issue in Greenfield. I urge all of the councilors to keep this on the front burner. We tend to address issues and we get all the media and everybody's all, you know, ready to go, and then we forget. I urge you, don't forget about this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Wendy Goodman, 529 Green River Road, Greenfield. I agree with the gentleman that just talked about that we shouldn't be attacking our counselors. I think that you all do amazing service. But I also want to say that we should not be attacked by our counselors for having a different opinion. And I would really like to feel that my counselors, whether they are mine particularly, are responding to my questions, and certainly if they're at large, that when I have a different opinion, that I am not approached in an attacking way. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. So, no public hearings tonight. Communications from Mayor.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, councilors. I'd like to echo the new grassroots movement tonight from David and Wendy, and say that we need to stop bashing the counselors and the mayor. I want to report that we've been able to confirm the financial advisor for February 27th for the meeting. We still haven't got a written confirmation from the bond council. We're still working on that. My first comment I'd like to make on, just get a few brief comments on the request tonight for the extension of the lease for Just Roots to 30 years. Many of you are so much younger than I, you probably don't remember that 10 years ago when we brought the idea of an APR, agricultural preservation restriction, to town-owned land. It was one of the few ever done in Massachusetts. The idea was to set up a group of people who were willing to take over a chunk of land that was virtually non-nutrient and nearly dead, and take it back and remove several tons of rocks and bring the farm back to the status it was about 150 years ago on a farm by the name, and the farm owner was Just Root. And so that has been done. You know, we contributed money. We received $217,000 from the APR, and we provided somewhere between $50,000 and $75,000 in cash to bring the nutrients back to that soil. With the APR, we also had grand plans of cleaning up our own site. We had about 5 acres up there as called the Resource Center. It was really our local material dump for the DPW. And we've cleaned it up enormously. It's been very useful for the city for several decades. I want to say it didn't happen just out of the blue. I mean, there are some people that were interested in trying to put that package together, primarily Jay Lord and Sandy Thomas and others at the time. But the uses for nearly 2 centuries was farmland. So this seemed like a good idea then to give a 15-year lease approved by the council, and then kind of like this midway point to reassess, reevaluate what the goals are and what the process has been over this time. But in that 7 years, we have never considered it for housing, for example. It's in a 200-foot plain from the river, the Green River. It's partly vegetated and wetland, but we did agree to create 50 community garden plots, and we did that right away, primarily to help the people who are on this community garden, where this center stands now, but also to make sure that they had a spot and everyone else had a spot if they wanted one in Greenfield. The public bidding process now, the people who are there now, Just Roots, went through the public bidding process, and we're extending that yearly lease at this point. The $3,500 that the city paid for the land in the late 1880s has been enormously well produced over the past 7 or 8 years. We've got enormous opportunities for people for extra food. I mean, how kind can you be? And for the city to provide the opportunity to grow your own, or to participate in a farm that's going to grow their own and give to you and sell to you, I think is a great opportunity for our town. There's some question about why doesn't the city do the solar? Because that's part of the extension. Because when you finance solar, you need a long-term control, site control, and so the opportunity to do solar, whether it was the city or Just Roots, you still need the long-term control. The opportunity to do solar is now. For a number of reasons, but particularly for larger solar projects. So developers and investors can have that opportunity at this point. We've been working on the Millbrook well for probably 3 years, and it was only last week that we got our approval. It wouldn't have taken that long, except the legislature got involved in the solar activity and seemed to slow things down with changing priorities and new regulations. But in any event, Greenfield is in with the Millbrook well. Just a couple comments. when they do solar, they have to go for a pilot program with the city. So even though there's no monetary amount in the lease with Just Roots, there is, by regulation, the solar developer has to come to the town for a pilot program. So we'll be, either me and this administration or the next, will be involved with negotiating the monetary benefits from a solar project. Lastly, I support the extension, and if you could consider it, you know, you have all the people that are involved in that, from Jessica to Jay to all the Ted and others. It's been a great community asset for the past 7 years. I'm also supporting the initiative for the zoning amendment and the MDR modifications. And maybe from a similar angle, I guess, as David, but when I and a small group of people, including a couple councilors here, proposed that the town rezone that property in the early 2000s, it was because it was underutilized. It was zoned industrial, and after a couple of decades, nobody had any industry plan for that site. So it seemed like a good idea to rezone to commercial, which was only an expansion of the existing commercial zone on French King Highway. So it expanded down toward Route 2 from Stop and Shop down to the intersection of Route 2 and Adams Road. The process was approved, and everyone thought there would be a lot of activity with that commercial zone. And there was. And then there was a process for a project, and a special permit was granted. It took maybe 2 years for that special permit to be granted, but it was approved. That was a commercial project. Several at the time, it was calculated at around $21 million. So there's been no activity lately on that site because it's been under appeal. And we have other commercial properties in town that have felt the stagnation from that appeal. So when developers come to Greenfield to look for something to do, they calculate what's going to be their competition and what could be their competition. Nobody knew that what was coming on the 17 acres. There's been some people that have declared that they knew and said it was Walmart. When I talked to Walmart, they said they wouldn't come to Greenfield. They're certainly not at 135,000. They might consider something under 100,000. So all of the activity around Greenfield, whether it was Market Basket or Marshalls and all these different companies that looked at Greenfield, didn't want to invest because they didn't know what was going to happen to that French King Highway. That cost us a lot of money. We can't calculate that. But I can calculate the over $1 million that we lost with fees and taxes since the special permit. And then we would have to add to that the amount of money, which isn't much because we've taken a secondary or tertiary role as an attorney representing the city of Greenfield and the planning board in the ongoing case. So I know it's it's coming up again in March. It's been and I put it in writing and I've said it before, it's been a phony case. There's been delay after delay after delay, from sprained ankles to I'm going to be out of town. The delays have been unreal in this particular unjust system of an appeal by a city, going from one court to another. You know, you can write a small book about it. Maybe someone will. The last thing I want to talk about is I don't know why it hasn't been printed or said loudly, but I've been told that Stop and Shop leases the property. And they lease the property because they don't want a grocery store there. Now, if that's not true, I wish Stop and Shop would send me a letter saying it's not true. If it is true, I wish Stop and Shop would send me a letter and say, why are they doing that? Is it purely to not allow the people of Greenfield a shopping choice? Is it purely to protect their profits? Is it purely to own French King Highway for themselves? So any communication from Stop and Shop would be welcome. My last comment was going to be on the fire department. Remember, we spent a couple years trying to put together the public safety complex on a number of different sites, analyzing them, coming to the final conclusion of the lease buy program on Wells Street, and then brought before the council. It was rejected. That's fine. You know, I supported it. You didn't. That's okay. So we went back to work, and when the instructions in a way were find a site that's owned by the town. And in the early 2000s, fire chief, the fire department, it was determined that the best site in Greenfield was Holy Trinity School. That would have been the best site and location for Greenfield. Of course, that school's gone now, and there's a parking lot there. And there's a plan for another building on that site. But we have taken the property by tax title across the street. It's a 95% clean site, and that's a site between Riddell and Beacon, owned by the city of Greenfield. That's been considered for a public safety complex. And the architect has been working on that site, placing the building. And right now we're waiting for a floor plan, which will give us access to estimates of cost. But the cost is going to be somewhere in the vicinity of $10 million or less. We have it in our debt graph and our future debt plans at $12.5 million. So we'll be deducting that $2.5 million from that bond borrowing plan. In addition, we have $2.3 million on an earmark in a bond bill for that site for demolition and other work, infrastructure work. And in the spring, we'll be starting the realignment of the Maplebrook Culvert so that it can be repaired and replaced. Those funds already exist in the plan with the DPW. So we're hoping that we'll get this information, detailed information on the floor plan and the cost by the 27th, so we have some real numbers and some rendering to look at for that site. It's been approved by the police chief, the fire chief, the Public Safety Commission, and several firefighters and police officers. So it has benefits in Beacon Street because of the signal lights exist already, and they're under the control of the fire department and police department, and there's very little structural change to take place at that intersection. And all of the traffic, most of it is planned to be used on Beacon Street. So I thank you, and I'll take any questions after. Liz wants to address a couple of other items on the agenda.
Thank you.
Hi there. There is a financial order on the agenda this evening to re-accept OPEB Chapter 32, Section 20. This is something that our auditors had recommended in a management letter comment from 2016. We, at discussion in Ways and Means, Councilor Mayo requested information on how our investment options change, which is a benefit of voting for this. And I will get that to you all, exactly how they do change. But it was something that came out of the Municipal Modernization Act, and it did give more options for cities and towns on investing for their OPEB funds. And you need to re-accept it in order to have these options. Secondly, the Mayor submitted a memo regarding dedicated revenues. This is something we just wanted to bring to your attention because we ultimately would like to move forward and bring a financial order to you. We would like your input and questions before then, but we are able to dedicate revenue now directly to a stabilization fund. That was, again, something that came out of the Municipal Modernization Act. We had a discussion on what I felt was the greatest need. First and foremost, I would say OPEB, because I had a discussion with Standard & Poor's, who indicated that our bond rating is heavily impacted by OPEB liability and liquidity. So both of these options, any option of dedicating revenue to a stabilization fund will certainly help and improve our financial position and sustain a good bond rating. So we will be bringing an order to possibly establish an OPEB stabilization. I know that's confusing because I just said we had an OPEB trust, but you can only dedicate revenue to a stabilization fund. So we would then transfer it from the stabilization fund by council vote to the OPEB trust. And we also spoke of capital project fund. We do have a capital stabilization that would be a secondary option, or if anyone feels there is a greater need, we're open to discussing this. We are speaking of dedicating, as the mayor's memo indicates, the revenue stream from the marijuana dispensaries that are opening. I think this is a good move for the city, and definitely puts us in a stronger financial position, and definitely would like any questions or insights or thoughts you have on this.
Councilor Sun?
Mayor, you were talking about the solar. In the paper today, there was an article by Eversource that wants to put a solar, let's say, my words, plant, area. Do you know any more about that than what was in the paper?
Was it in Greenfield, Councilor?
Yes, it was in Greenfield, and they had an area in Greenfield that they were going to be looking at, and Turner's Falls and a couple other places.
Yeah. Eversource currently is already developing one on Barton Road, and I think it's nearly finished. It's a large one, a large megawatt solar system. That's why there's a lot of activity in solar on Barton and Log Plain Road and Leiden Road, is because they have already upgraded their electrical lines.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
Councilor Pearson?
Mayor, I looked at this contract, and what I was furnished by the clerk's office is the contract without the exhibits, and I don't know if the other councilors here have the exhibits which are listed in 1 through 12 on page 11. But irrespective of that, what sort of troubles me is this. This is a 30-year agreement, which is a long period of time. The Chinese had one with the British for 99 years in Hong Kong, but this is not quite that long, but it's up there. In any event, the provisions of this agreement, 15.4, basically indicate that in default of Just Roots, the solar corporation takes all the rights of Just Roots. That's what the words assign all the rights, powers, and interests in the premises. Then I look at the exhibits and I see essentially something in paragraph 11 called the Community Solar Project Agreement to be incorporated in Exhibit G upon subsequent execution by the city and solar subtenants. So I assume, without asking, and without seeing this agreement, that since they are not a party, the two parties to this agreement are the towns and Just Roots, so they're not a signatory to this agreement, and basically we're voting on an agreement which adds a third party, which all may be good with it. I'm not quarreling with that. But this council has not seen the third party agreement to this agreement. So what you're doing is you're essentially having what, I hate to use legal terms, but you have a contract of adhesion by incorporation of that exhibit into this agreement. So unless there's some other agreement with these folks that was entered into before, we are voting on something, honestly, that we don't see. I have a lot of problems with that, just from a transparency point of view, and I think it would have been better formed for us to have seen that. And I don't understand why the solar company wasn't a party to this agreement instead of a third party beneficiary. Can you help me out with that?
Yes. Of course, you know, Hong Kong let that lease expire.
Right, but I don't think I'm going to be around when this one expires.
No, and I don't think I will either. That's why the language in the contract stipulates that the solar company has to negotiate with the city. The city has to develop a pilot program with the solar company, whatever solar company it is, and whenever it is.
But that's in the subsequent agreement.
No, that's in a pilot agreement. It states in the contract that the city will develop a pilot agreement with the solar company. The second part of your question, I think, has to deal with the movement of what's going to happen with the solar company or the land.
Well, I'm just taking it as it's presented in 11. Community Solar Project Agreement to be incorporated as Exhibit G upon subsequent execution between the city and the solar subtenant.
So you got three.
Well, this is a contract in the future which is going to revert to this contract in the present.
Right. We have three parties involved. Two of them are to the contract. One is not yet signed. It's not yet signed because the developer hasn't negotiated with the town yet for the solar pilot program. If in between now and then, or now and 30 years, Just Roots, all the people say, geez, we have more food than we can eat, we're not going to do this anymore, and then the investors in the solar company have to be assured that the plan that has been established, the rights of Just Roots now reverts to the solar ownership, so that they can still keep the solar company there. So part of the pilot program will be dealing with the other aspects of solar, which is how much, who buys, what's the price, how much are you going to give the town for the number of kilowatt hours produced, how are you going to dispose of the panels at a later date. So all of that is involved in the solar pilot program, which would become then part of that contract.
Well, this is an executive function, and you negotiated the contract, and we're not in the business of negotiating contracts. On the other hand, it would seem to me to be a more transparent practice if the exhibits in connection with the contract upon which we are.
I think that's a good point. I don't know why they weren't delivered to the clerk's office, or if they were, why you didn't receive them.
Before us.
So let me just for your own confidence, because I don't want you to think I have any legal background. The attorneys.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that at all.
Attorneys reviewed, a city attorney and Just Roots attorneys reviewed that contract before it came to the council. And actually, I don't think I've signed it yet. Really? No. So I think maybe other attorneys too have reviewed it. So I think everyone has an opinion. So hopefully this will be passed by the council tonight.
Point of parliamentary inquiry. Madam President, do we know if, I have not seen the exhibits. I don't know if other councilors have. Is there a way to find out whether or not we've received them? Has anyone received them?
I do not recall receiving them, but it doesn't mean I haven't received them.
Yeah. Well,
And our town clerk is, she's on vacation, and our assistant, so our assistant town clerk, Geneva, can check tomorrow. We can get an answer to that. But just because I don't remember doesn't mean I didn't see it. Anything else? Councilor Gilmore.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to ask about the commercial evaluations that we had appropriated some money for last year. You said they were going to begin in January, I believe. So I wanted to see if they began, and I have a second question, and since I only get to ask one, I'm just going to tag it on. So I believe that the skate park was slated to go in that area in Riddell that you're talking about for a public safety complex. And I know that when Susan Morgaftic came to the council and was very upset about what she had heard about the fire station going in there, my understanding was you were going to still try and find something for the skate park, and I wanted to know where that was going.
Well, the answer to your first question, it has begun, commercial reevaluation. I'm not sure of how many they've done yet, but they'll be before the council in the very near future, or before the Ways and Means anyways. The skate park had discussed being on that site. There were some drawings depicting where the park would go and how it would look. And we've had discussions with Susan and Christie and others. There was we had a bid in at one time for $1 million for a grant, and that didn't materialize. There are no funds to build a skate park. The town owns about 1.5 acres next to the site where the public safety complex is planned to be built. So that would be the site where the skate park could go. I think I've been pretty consistent with my my request to the skateboard oversight group, and that is to find a site, speak to all of the abutters and neighbors, and I'll work with you on that site if everyone's in agreement. That hasn't happened on Beacon Street. To move that skate park closer to Federal Street is probably not going to be pleasant for the people in the 1, 2, 3 residential homes on Beacon Street, and maybe the 2 on Riddell Street. So no money is being contributed for design or location or any work on that land for the skate park, but that's where it could go.
Councilor Mass?
Thank you, President Reno. I also have 2 questions, although I'm really confused about how people might be upset by skateboarding, but might not be upset by racing fire engines. The questions I have are, first, it's been a year since the legislature passed the Pay Equity Act, and that Pay Equity Act gives an affirmative defense for municipalities that do a gender pay equity study. do you anticipate that there will be funds in this year's operating budget for the town to do such a study to see if we're paying people equitably based on their gender? And the second question I have is the governor has proposed a new tax with hundreds of millions of dollars going to fund his #1 priority for the next 4 years, which is climate change mediation and the municipal vulnerabilities program, while all of our neighbors and a third of the municipalities in the county and the state have gone through the initial planning process and are starting to get money from those funds. We haven't started that planning process, which there's money for to do the planning. All we have to do is ask for it and put staff time into it. Can you tell us when we might start trying to get in the pipeline for the MVP program?
Sure. Your last question, the MVP program, we've in the process of making that application for determining which sites in Greenfield. So we'll be getting the planning money and probably not funded for the site work. That'll be up to the next administration next year. What was your first question?
First question, Mr. Mayor, was whether or not there would be funds in this year's operating budget for a pay equity study.
Right. So we've been working with the attorneys have both municipalities. We are compliant to date. I'm not sure that we're going to have any funds available or dedicated to the Pay Equity Act as determined by our attorney's recommendation because we did the in-house survey of job descriptions. So I can have that opinion and update from SHQ sent out to all the councilors if you want. Thank you, Mr. You're welcome. And your first question, skateboard parks and fire trains?
I'm just
fire engines running up
why
and down.
skateboards are annoying, but fire engines are not. That's bizarre to me.
Yeah, well, we've had a complaint about one of the neighbors in the area are not happy with the fire truck on her street. And we've also had several discussions on why a skate park should be built so close to the school.
Vice President Ricketts.
I first want to say that as far as the Just Roots property, I do plan on being around in 30 years, so.
Okay.
I want to talk to you about parking. Now that the parking garage is open, did you have to do any changes in any of the parking we had around town? You know, like I know that we added some on some of the side streets up around like in Precinct 5 and such. I just wondered if we removed any parking elsewhere, if things kind of worked out at all.
Yeah, it's still evolving. We had an initial thought that the residential permits on the side streets would be not allowed, but people were asking for them for their own permits. So we've considered, we've had some discussions with neighbors on primarily Church, Franklin, Prospect, and Congress, that the residents would receive a residential permit on their own at no cost because that's the residents' property in a way, and they're normal parking. We haven't really decided, there's not enough information to determine whether all of those permits will be pulled and force people to park in the parking lots in the garage. So it's kind of just letting people choose where they want to park.
I do want to commend the town that during the snowstorm, they opened up the top deck of the parking lot for so people that live on some side streets and such, they could go there. And I just couldn't believe how happy so many people were. I kept reading it on social media and stuff, so I commend the town for doing that.
Thank you. I'll pass that on to Marlo and his crew.
Councilor Mayo?
Mr. Mayor, you mentioned a public safety complex for the first time in a couple of months. When we've talked about the location of a fire station. We've been talking about that space in between Riddell Street and Beacon Street, but not a public safety complex. Can you enlighten us as to why the change in?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that and asking that question. It's an incomplete public safety complex. It's a fire station without dispatch and without police. So it'll be fire and emergency operations. But the footprint will be available for adding on at some time in the future. There's just a lot of different things happening simultaneously and have been for about a year and a half. As they develop and become concrete, then they can be included in planning. But at this point, they're not, and so we'll have to just do with what we know for sure.
Just to follow up, not on the second question on this OPEG fund that we're talking about. It's 3%, correct? Is it 3% on every sale?
Right. There's two types of, there's a local and state excise. One is 3% collected by the Department of Revenue. The other is 3% collected by the town.
Right.
So it's ostensibly 6%.
When do you get that? Do you get that quarterly, annually, or can you give me a ballpark?
Yeah, so the 3% by the state, they've said they're going to do it like the food and lodging, which is paid quarterly. The 3% by the town is, I think the contracts call for it in August. So it's annually.
And would that affect how you invest that?
The OPEB?
Yes.
So what we're saying is that an X amount of money taken from this new and known revenue source should be dedicated to OPEB. And so that's for our discussion, whether it's a percentage or a fixed amount. Liz is suggesting a fixed amount so that it can be counted on, and the credit rating companies consider a dedicated source to be a high benefit for them and their ratings.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for the mayor? I'm sorry, David, we don't take questions from the audience.
I was told to get here at a certain point in time, but the weather was so bad, I got here late. I did run the skate park committee fundraising in Montague, and I could comment briefly regarding skate park.
I'm sorry, I can't, because if I make one exception, then I have to make an exception for a whole bunch of people, but you're welcome to come to the next town council meeting and comment at the beginning or write to us. We appreciate you coming from Turner's and to share that information, but yeah, next time. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you. GSET, I don't think is here tonight. So I'm seeing things, so school committee and superintendent.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
So the superintendent was not able to make it this evening, so I don't have a full-on comprehensive report on the goings-on activities at the schools exactly. However, it is vacation week, so I hope that all of our students are having a great time during this school vacation, playing in the snow and relaxing a little bit. From the committee table, you'll want to know a few things. As you know, we're in negotiations right now with Unit A. Unit C will begin in the next week or so. As well, our policy work continues on with the MASC. We saw a first reading at the full committee of Section A of our policy at our last school committee meeting, and we will continue on with all of that. We have a meeting scheduled for the policy subcommittee, let's see, March 4th, I believe, at 5 p.m. In addition, You'll probably want to know a little bit about the FY20 budget deliberation that's been happening at the subcommittee level. Some of those meetings have been quite spirited. At this time, the committee is reviewing a budget of approximately $19.9 million. This reflects an increase of approximately, or an estimated increase of approximately $1.1 million in Chapter 70 funding, and some modification to our use of revolving funds. At the subcommittee level, there's been interesting conversation related to some real awareness of how we're using our revolving fund accounts, and an interest in supporting our schools moving into FY20. At the last meeting, there was a motion to support, at a minimum, a level services budget moving forward. So on February 25th, that's this coming Monday, we will have a budget presentation for the full committee and our public hearing. We encourage everyone from the council and, of course, members of the public to either attend the meeting or view the meeting. The superintendent did also want to be sure that if counselors have any questions about anything that's going on with the budget, to please be in touch with her or Steve Numberco, our business manager. The current draft budget is online with a budget summary at our website at gpsk12.org. Our final vote on the budget will be on March 7th. That's a Thursday. I do not believe we have a set location for that meeting just yet, so please stay tuned for that. And let's see, last but not least, I think on your agenda today is the first reading of a movement of money to support the cafeteria workers contract. We urge you to support that contract. It's a fairly small amount of money in contrast to other items. With that contract, we did clean up some language in that contract to accommodate some better professional language opportunities and some mandatory trainings for ServSafe. And in addition, we are trying to keep up with minimum wage and address some limitations that were related to managerial pay in that particular unit.
Does anybody have any questions for Chair Nunez? Councilor Beerson.
Hi.
We have on our agenda, I believe, a contract for approval that the school will be negotiated in connection with its food service workers.
Yes.
And I looked at the wage scale that was included, and I really don't know how anybody can live on this. This is a wage scale which starts off at about $11 an hour, and then after 8 steps, in fiscal 2020, winds up with $16 and essentially 50 cents. And I'm assuming, but I'll ask you, that these wages are paid over a 10-month period. Am I correct in assuming that?
It's my understanding that they actually have an option. I could be wrong about that. Some of our employees do opt to have their payments made over the course of a 12-month cycle.
Well, I guess I must have missed it, but I suppose from a fiscal point of view, it's a very, very tight situation, but these folks have got to be, part of the working poor, and frankly, I find it outrageous. I find it absolutely outrageous that these folks are paid a wage that I don't know how they live on it. So I'm really, concerned about the treatment of probably the most vulnerable people in the whole school system. And this is a concern of mine. I don't know where the bidding process started out on this situation. But this is a sad commentary. Thank you.
You're welcome. Chair Nunez, I have any update on the Green River School?
Yes, actually, you'll see in our FY20 draft budget that we are looking at staffing the Great Schools program that was voted on by the committee last year. This will come up for review again, I believe, in April. We've got that scheduled to review the plan and look to opening that building up for service to our students at the start of next year. And if I could quickly respond, Mr. Bierson, is that correct? Burson. I appreciate your comments. On a personal level, I mean, I very deeply appreciate your comments, and I just want to say that the committee at all times is considering the welfare of our employees and doing the best that we can to provide for them and ensure that we have adequate wages for our workers. So we work very hard to do that.
Councilor Mess?
Could you clarify which students are you anticipating are going to be going into the Green River School next year?
Yes, so the Great Schools plan is essentially for students that may be needing a slightly alternative program in order to reach high school graduation.
This is the same program that was being contemplated for this January.
That is correct, yeah. At this time, it has not changed. As I mentioned, we will be reviewing that come April, just to ensure that everything is, what we want it to be.
Tia Nunez, could I ask you a question? So the alternative, so the thought is to put the alternative school into the Green River School. Does that mean the toilets and other things that are small for small people need to be adjusted?
That may be the case.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering. Councilor Mass?
When you're looking at it in April, is there going to be any look at the STAR report again that was done and the request of many parents to put fifth graders back at the elementary and reopen the Green River School as an elementary school? Is that even under consideration?
What's on the calendar right now for us is to review the plan that's in place moving forward. So that would not inherently necessarily include deliberation on moving the fifth grades into the elementary schools and opening that school as an elementary. However, I will relay your commentary to the group.
So what I think I'm hearing and what concerns me is that the current plan that's proposed by the superintendent is on the table. And if it's not approved...
We have approved it.
You have approved that plan?
Yep. We also voted to suspend opening the building for various reasons. And so because of that, there was an interest in bringing this up again to check in again in the springtime. So that's where we're at with it, but it has been approved.
Okay, so if I just want to make sure I understand. My understanding is it was approved for January open because that was the only thing that could open mid-year was that program. You couldn't reconfigure all of the schools for mid-year. You're now bringing it back, so presumably the reason you're bringing it back is because you might change your mind. And if you change your mind, it sounds like there's no alternative plan in place. Is it a choice or is it a review? What is actually going to be happening in April? If you know.
Thank you, Councilor Mass. At this time, there's a need to bring it up for deliberation simply to confirm the opening date. And it is my understanding that we are moving forward, that no change has been made to the plan. However, at that time, we will have a better understanding of our budget figures and any modifications that we may need to make. So I would imagine that there may be some additional conversation. You're welcome.
Anything else? Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I hope to see you on the 25th.
Okay, moving on to motions, orders, and resolutions. We already did number 1, so we're going to go to number 2, and that is Councilor Stemple, I believe, or is it Councilor Wheeler? For Just Roots.
City Council, upon recommendation of Mayor Martin, ordered that the lease with the Just Roots Incorporated be approved for a term of 30 years in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30B, Section 12B.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Report from committee.
This was recommended with a split majority vote. There was some concern that that it is a long lease and whether or not it offers enough compensation, but there was, I think, consensus that Just Roots has a positive mission and achieves a lot of positive ends in the city.
Councilor Wheeler, could I ask just what was meant by there's not enough compensation?
Well, it's the Just Roots pays about $1,000 per year, which some people could consider not just compensation, although I think, speaking personally, that if you look at how much they bring back to the community, I voted in favor of it because I think they give a lot.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Somebody from the committee who voted against it want to speak? Council Mass?
That leaves only me. My concern isn't so much the compensation, although I do think it's inequitable that we're making Little Leaguers pay 25% of everything that they raise, and we're making Just Roots pay nothing over the $1,000. I don't think that's equitable. But my bigger problem is the process, that this has not gone to the Agricultural Commission or the Planning and Construction Committee, which we have those in place specifically to do long-range planning of these kinds of things. This has been negotiated exclusively through the mayor's office and not the most open process, and that's not Just Roots' fault. That is, I think, the way it's come to us. I am very concerned. I asked for this to be continued for 30 days for us to have an opportunity to review the contract, and I will apologize. I did some review of the contract. I did not have an opportunity to do the in-depth review that I was hoping to be able to do because I was involved in other matters for the council. But I am concerned about our newest councilor, Burson's observation that we don't have the appendixes, which I was not able to get into. And I think we have an obligation to look at them. And so my suggestion today would be that we table this for 30 days to give us the opportunity to get the appendixes and review just to make sure that every councilor, even the councilors who are in favor of this, don't have a problem with what's in the appendices.
Any other comments, or is it Councilor Dolan?
I would ask that perhaps we recognize the folks from Just Roots who appeared to have some explanation about the appendices. Is that possible?
Sure. Councilor Dolan has requested that Just Roots approach the council, and I am granting that request. Just to be clear.
And my apologies if you do not have an explanation for that and if it's not your fault.
Yes, all the appendices were given when submitted with the lease, and we were told that they would be made available upon request because they're about this thick. And so we assumed that you all would read it, and if you wanted to see them, you would ask them. They're at the town's office. And apparently nobody did that. So I apologize, but they were available. With the exception of the solar contract, because that's non-existent right now. So I hope that clarifies that we did put them forward. You want me to repeat it? Oh, sorry. So when we submitted the lease, we had all the appendices with it, but it was about 80 pages. It's pretty thick. And so we were told that they would be made available upon request so that you weren't receiving, the heavy paper lift. And so our assumption was that when you read it, when you got to the appendices and saw they weren't there and you were made aware they would be available upon request, that you would make that request and they would be made available to you. That was our assumption based on what we were told. So they were in fact available.
And perhaps I could speak to what these appendices actually are. These refer back to the original RFP that was executed between the city of Greenfield and Just Roots back during that 30B RFP process. So if we to run through really just quickly through these appendices, the legal notice refers back to that advertisement that was made pursuant to MGL 30B back when the original lease was negotiated. Also incorporates the city's request for proposals and specifications, the 3 original copies of this lease, which would be signed. That would be incorporated into this agreement. The tenant's original response to the proposal, which is basically Just Roots' original proposal, which is this, to operate a community farm, to provide healthful, nourishing food for the community. Premises lease exceptions, that's also included in the original lease, so that's just incorporated back from the original lease that was negotiated previously. Disclosure of beneficial interest, this is a standard Massachusetts 30B form that just requires that a bidder in a 30B process to disclose any potential interest in real property that they might have. If there is a common interest between the bidder and the municipality. So that's a standard form that's certificate of non-collusion, again, a standard form, and then a resolution of the Just Roots Board of Directors stating that they're going to enter into the lease, a map of the city farm property, which is tax map, the certificate of insurance, which is an accord certificate showing that Just Roots is properly insured, the community solar pilot agreement. Yep.
The certificate of insurance, is the town and Maine insured on that certificate?
Correct. That's the requirements of 30B generally. In the original, I believe, in the original RFP document, that's the requirement. So it would just be an accord certificate showing them as an insured. The community solar pilot agreement doesn't exist yet because there is no project, and you can't create a pilot agreement until, that's a negotiation that whatever entity comes in and decides to build the solar project will negotiate with the city. So the city, the way I drafted this document was trying to provide the city enough hooks into the agreement so that these sorts of issues can be resolved. However, they won't it's a cart horse scenario. You can't enter into a pilot agreement if you don't have site control or an interest in land. You can't convey something or take an interest in something that you don't have.
Do you have a situation in which there's an RFP or there is some kind of specifications that goes into this agreement?
Into a pilot agreement?
Right.
No, that is separate and apart because under the statute, cities and municipalities in Massachusetts specifically have the right to tax personal property. The fact that this exists on publicly owned land does not make the infrastructure that would be built non-taxable because it would be subject to personal property taxation. So there's a specific provision in the that allows municipalities to enter into these pilot agreements, to sit down with the developer and say, hey, what's our slice of the pie here? And so the town would be getting a pilot payment in addition to anything else that we, resolve. Is there a formula for it?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a general practice across the state. It depends totally upon the size of the system, and it's really proportional to the size of the system and, whatever else comes into play. Generally, again, with no actual project on the table, it's hard to speculate on what that actual payment can be, but in some cases it's like, 20 grand, 30 grand. It really depends on the size of the system. And you don't know that until you get, a developer in there that actually understands and can bid on it. It may be the case this site is completely unsuitable for this type of development, and then in this case it would just be, pure conjecture to say that it could be this, it could be that. The last bit on the last appendix item is the notice of lease to be signed. That would be this lease, and it would just be recorded in the Registry of Deeds. And so that is all what those sort of appendices refer back to within this document. So it's just really trying to button up all those loose ends so that, again, the way we approached drafting this document was to allow, in the case that, God forbid, Just Roots ever disappeared as an organization, that the city would be able to step into the shoes of Just Roots, have all of its rights relative to any other further, just if there was a solar facility built there, the city would have the right to come in and start getting those payments from this, the solar facility, in addition to its payment in lieu of taxes agreement. So you eat twice if things don't work out for Just Roots. That's the way we structured it. We think that's abundantly fair in the context of this agreement.
I was listening while you were talking, but I was also looking for an email that might have said that these were available at the town hall, and I couldn't find it, so I can't blame counselors at this point for having not seen the documents, and unless it's somewhere in an email and I just can't find it. It could have been said to us at the last meeting. I just really don't remember. Councilor Mass, did you have a question?
I don't anticipate any counselors are going to see anything in these appendices that are going to change their mind. I want to be frank and forthright with, and I don't have a concern about the legal work that's being done. I do know that to put counselors' minds at ease, that because that appendix has not been voted on by the council, it won't be binding until it does. So that appendix has to come back before us for final approval before it becomes part of the lease itself, before it can go on record at the registry or anything else. That all said, it's our job to look at these things, and we should look at it and take the time to look at it. There's at least one counselor who has some questions about it. I think we've been told this is important, but it is not so time sensitive that it can't wait. I think I know how this is going to go ultimately next month, but I don't think we should be setting the precedent of not reviewing these contracts. I think that puts us in a bad position for future matters that come before us, not necessarily this one.
Well, are there any other questions? Councilor Dolan?
Yeah, I just want to say, I reviewed the lease and looked at the list of appendices and thought about contacting the clerk's office, but I really don't need to see the proposal that you initially wrote because I see the evidence of what Just Roots does every day. I don't need to see a map because I'm familiar with the property. I agree with Councilor Mass, this is not going to add to my understanding of the situation. These do not seem material to the agreement that we're voting on necessarily. And I made that decision deliberately. So I'm not going to be supporting a motion to table this. I think we owe it to these folks who have come 2 months in a row to this meeting. Is it 3 now? 3 months in a row to this meeting to move this along.
Vice President Ricketts, and then Councilor Beerson.
I agree with Councilor Dolan. I do believe that we should vote tonight because they have come, and I do appreciate the knowledge that Councilor Mass shared about it not going to that Agricultural Commission or Planning and Building first, and I just wish it was brought up a lot earlier because it's no fault of theirs. But that is a really good point that we will remember in the future, but I don't want to hold them any further because it seems like the moment we want to vote, we start bringing up all of this stuff. And I'm desperately trying to look through, but for those of you who know, there's a few things going on in the city right now, so we have lots of emails, and I'm trying to go through this as quick as I can. And I know that we did receive the email, and it did say, if we have any questions, to please submit them to Just Roots.
Yes, I did see that,
And I know
yeah.
we remembered. I remember getting that information. And so I'm in favor of voting for this tonight.
Councilor Beerson?
I appreciate what you offered because it was I appreciate what you offered because it was a great help. Your explanation is what was in the exhibit. My point was that I really have a great deal of difficulty approving something when I don't see it. But I'm trusting you that your representations are forthcoming. So I would support going forward, understanding that if for some reason there is something askew in the exhibits, that we'll have an opportunity to look at this again. I think the vote ought to be in terms of the contract, the agreement that is before us, with the reservation that it will have to be finally approved upon the submission and the review of the exhibits. And I say that because of just the doctrine of completeness, and we really shouldn't be voting on things that are not before us. But I appreciate all your effort and am definitely in support of what you're trying to do.
Okay, Councilor Mass.
I hear Councilor Burrs, and I know councilors want to vote this tonight, but I just fear we're going to be in a position where we're going to have to come back and vote this again next month. So just be prepared. If you vote it tonight, you might have to come back and vote it next month. If it was filed with the mayor's office but never made it to the clerk, we're going to have to revisit this anyway.
Okay, seeing no other discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? There are two Councilor Sun and Councilor Mass oppose and abstain. No abstentions, the motion carries. Thank you. Okay, I need to do a little bit of explaining for motions number 3 and motions number 4. They both need 12 votes of the town council. We don't have 12 town councilors here.
Move to table items 3 and 4 of the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? That was easy. Councilor Wheeler.
City Council, upon recommendation of Mayor Martin, ordered that to see if the city will vote to re-accept the provisions of General Law, Chapter 32B, Section 20, as amended by the Municipal Modernization Act, Chapter 218 of the Acts of 2016, under which the city has established an other post-employment benefits liability trust fund, the OPEB fund, and designate the treasurer as custodian and trustee of the fund.
Motion's been made and seconded. Report from committee.
This was a unanimous positive recommendation.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Director Gilman spoke to this during communications. Basically, this gives the city some more options around dedicating funds, and there were no objections heard.
Any other comments? Discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Councilor Wheeler.
City Council, upon recommendation of Mayor Martin, moved that it be ordered that the City Council, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40 and Massachusetts law, hereby authorizes the mayor to grant and execute an easement located at 298 Federal Street for the purposes as described in the attached documents.
Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded. Report from committee.
We did not make a recommendation on this one.
Okay. Did you just not get to it?
It was not on my, and I may have had the wrong agenda, but it was not on my agenda. I had seen it prior to it, but it was not in the one that I had with me.
Okay. Councilor Gilmore? Maybe you did. Maybe you had it.
This actually made it onto the A&O agenda.
Oh, good.
And we were all surprised. We thought it was going to be on economic development. So prior to A&O, none of us had read it. We were dealing with other matters. We all agreed that we were going to send this up to the council with no recommendation and that we were going to do our homework in the meantime. So I'm hoping that everyone on my committee has done that.
Okay, so is this, it sounds like somebody wants a motion to table? Or?
I've read it since then.
Okay, so
I don't need to table it, but if other people want to table it because they've been overcome by some of the other issues we've been dealing with, I wouldn't vote against it.
Vice President Ricketts?
I looked it over briefly, and I feel that if Bear Martin and/or Mark Smith can just give us a brief overview, I do believe that we could vote on this tonight.
Mark Smith? Could you approach? What, you can speak to, could you speak to this, please, as requested by Councilor Ricketts, Vice President Ricketts?
Yeah, there's a time sensitivity to this. Basically, it's regarding to install new and upgraded electrical communications for Unit B at 298 Federal Street, formerly known as the Lunt property, because that's being rehabbed to be a commercial occupancy. And so this is through Eversource. And so the purpose of this is to get this done. And the reason why it got sent to A&O because EDC did not meet, and so that's why it was obviously not recommended without any recommendation for a vote by the council.
What is the time sensitivity?
The time sensitivity, because they're trying to make, because they're actually doing the rehab right now, so they can obviously put this easement in so they can actually do the actual work with Eversource. So there's a timeline regarding that as it went through planning, through Eric's office, and then through the attorneys that are involved. Town council has also, the town attorney has also reviewed this and found that it meets conformity.
Councilor Mass?
This isn't really complicated. This is a utility easement. It increases the value of the property for the town.
Vice President Ricketts?
Make a motion to move question.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Nope, I did call it. No, it was I just did do two motions. Okay. 7. Did this go to EDC? No. Did this go to A&O? We had a rough month.
The City Council moved that it be ordered that the Greenfield City Council amends the Code of the City of Greenfield by adding to Chapter 385, Streets, Sidewalks, and Public Places, Article 15, Street Opening, subsection 72, Paragraph A, permanent patch is attached hereto, and further amends the table of contents and index of contents of the code, and further the non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the city, the Code of the City of Greenfield. This was a unanimous positive. Everybody was in favor of this. It's something that is going to cost us no money, but it's going to save us some money in the long run, hopefully.
Okay, who seconded that, just for the record?
Second.
Okay, that's okay. Is there any other discussion? No, seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Okay. Where are we at here? Councilor Mass, do you want to do this one?
We move the Greenfield City Council withdraws their vote taken on February 14th, 2019, and to initiate a zone change on order number fiscal year 19-086.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Council Master, do you want to explain?
Yeah, you'll see that we have a second motion immediately following recommendation of the Planning Department and after consultation with Councilor Reno and myself and the Planning Department, the Clerk's Office, not yet Councilor Burson, who is present to assist us as well. There was general agreement to add a severability clause to the next motion related to MDR as out of an abundance of caution, and this is sort of the deadline to do that to meet our timeline.
Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Councilor Mass?
Be it moved that the City Council of Greenfield hereby initiates the following zone change in accordance with Mass General Law 40A, Section 5A, 200-7.12 Major Development Review by, in Section B1, replacing 1,000 with the word 3,000, replacing 500 with the word 1,500, and in Section B4, replacing 100,000 with 150,000, and 15,000 with 35,000, and 40,000 with 75,000. Deleting Section 5B in its entirety, and in Section C, striking 1 and 2 in their entirety and replacing with 1. The special permit granting authority shall be the Zoning Board of Appeals, and in Section E, striking adversely impact and replace with create a material adverse impact on, and in Section F, adding the words adding to the words upon the review of the project the following language: notwithstanding the provisions of Mass General Law 40A, all decisions of special permit granting authority shall be made within 210 days from the initial date of application. The failure to issue a decision within 210 days shall result in the granting of the special permit as presented, and a constructive grant shall be issued in accordance with the provisions of Mass General Law 40A. And further, to amend the table and context of the index of the code, and further non-substantive changes to the numbering in the ordinance be permitted in order that it follow the numbering format of the code of the City of Greenfield. The provisions of this regulation shall be severable should any section or provision of this regulation be held to be invalid or unenforceable for any reason. It shall have not have effect on the validity and enforcement of any other section of this provision of this regulation, and this regulation exclusive of the invalid and unenforceable section or provision shall to the full extent consistent with the law remain in full force and effect.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Just to clarify, this is a standard clause that we add to a lot of our ordinances just because we are not sending things out to Attorney General for review before their adoption.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Councilor Wheeler, you're going to do the first readings, and just on first readings, we usually don't debate. We just have the first readings put out there, and then we know that they're coming for the next meeting, and then gives us an opportunity to ask questions by the next meeting through the clerk's office. And so it's page 37.
37, oh, yeah. First reading, February 20th, 2019. The following sums be appropriated from the Contractual Stabilization Fund to fund retroactive provisions of contract agreement. Local 274, cafeteria and food service workers. 2017-2018 school year, $5,092.77. 2018-2019 school year, $8,685.28, for a total of $13,778.05. Contractual stabilization balance, $91,687.09.
Presentation of petitions and similar papers. Does anybody want to do a report from their committee? I know that our new committees just started. A&O.
We decided to keep a couple things back in committee, so you'll be hearing from us about those things later. But at our next chairs meeting, we're going to talk about the ideas that we came up with to make our meetings a little bit shorter.
Oh, terrific. Ways and Means, I know you met tonight. Is there anything else?
I think we covered most of it. We did, following a memo from the mayor, initiate a conversation around the residential exemption. We were in agreement that now is a good time to start the conversation, and that we would invite the consultants, RRG, and our assessor to a future meeting, whether it be next month or the month after.
Great. And I know that EDC hasn't met yet, but you have some
We
stuff
have a
on your
lot of
table.
fun things coming up in the hopper, don't we? So this year, I'd really like to focus some efforts on the downtown. And so our next meeting, I believe, we haven't set the date yet, but I think that's the first joint public hearing with the planning board. So that's probably the 12th. But then we will also have another joint hearing or joint meeting with A&O when we host Yves Solomon Fernandez, the president of GCC. And then hopefully thereafter we'll be able to really do some work working with downtown businesses to understand. What? That's CRE. What is? Joint with CRE. My apologies. Thank you. I have a raging headache. And then to work with downtown businesses to understand kind of like a Greenfield Modernization Act, to look at our ordinances and see how we can help our downtown thrive.
Thank you. Councilor Leonovich?
We'll be meeting CRE on Monday, so we'll start fresh. We have a few things on the agenda. We'll move forward from there.
Terrific. This feels like the first meeting in a long time. We've had enough time to actually do committee reports, so much so that I skipped over all of these things and went right to first readings, which I'm sure most of you noticed. But thank you for not making a big deal out of it. Unfinished business. Old business. New business, I want to create another task force to look at issues of sheltering, and because the housing task force is going so well. So if anybody's interested in being on that task force, let me know. There's a lot of people that, you know, at that meeting that we had that was so large, there were a lot of people there who want to get involved, and it really helps to have the hand of government helping them organize themselves, more than I think we realize. So we get them a space to meet and we pull some things together. So that's the advantage. Motions for reconsideration? And a motion for adjournment. All in favor? Opposed? Abstained? This meeting is adjourned.
Our productions at GCTV are sponsored in part by Bay State Health, providing the care you and your family need when you need it close to home. Visit them online at baystatehealth.org. Greenfield Savings Bank. Visit them at 400 Main Street in Greenfield. Call them at 774-3191 or go online to greenfieldsavings.com. Greenfield Community College, providing access and excellence in higher education in the Pioneer Valley. Visit them at gcc.mass.edu. The Hammond Family. The Hammond family are longtime supporters of Greenfield Community Television. New Fortune Chinese Restaurant on the Mohawk Trail in Greenfield. Visit them online at newfortunema.com. Call them at 772-0838 and check them out on Facebook. Real Cleaning Services, cleaning Hampshire and Franklin County since 1972. We don't cut corners, we clean them. Check them out online at realclean.com. Call them at 413-422-1143. People's United Bank, located at 45 Federal Street in Greenfield. You can call them at 774-3713 or visit them online at peoples.com. The Solar Store of Greenfield, replacing fossil fuels and nuclear power one home at a time. Visit them at 23 Fisk Ave. Call them at 413-772-3122 or visit them online at solarstoreofgreenfield.com. Thank you to our sponsors for supporting all of GCTV's productions.